Hello everyone, this is Sarah Stephenson. Before we begin our usual reviews, I thought I might take this time out to do a shout out to the families of the victims from the Ocean Gates Titanic tour incident that's probably still being talked about at the moment. I hope the families are okay, and I hope that they'll find closure from this incident very soon. Okay, that's it I want to say. So let's get into this now. So let's begin our first review. So today we're going to review the movie called Julia and Julia, a biodrama that's about two women from different eras who've given us who've changed the world with food and more food. Anyway, so let's dive into it, folks. So let's begin. So Julia Child is journeying to France for her husband's work, Paul, obviously, and there they spend their time, eating, hanging out at restaurants, hanging out with friends, and etc. etc. And so, as she then decides to enroll herself into cookery school because she's been trying to find special cookbooks, to cook French food and stuff. Unfortunately, there is not a French book to be found that's written in English, obviously. So she goes and enrolls herself in Le Cordon Bleu, I think it was, called cookery school, where she trains with professional chefs, and soon enough she becomes more professional than them and really impresses the teacher and stuff like that. Then we meet Julia Powell, who is an ordinary woman who works in a government building, lives with her husband named Eric Powell, and they've moved to Brooklyn to restart their lives and stuff. And of course, Julie is not too pleased about being moved out to this far out, so she is less than thrilled about this idea. So she has to put up with a lousy job and working conditions, and the fact that she also has to put up with some snobby sorority friends who are doing better at their jobs than her, sadly enough. And one of the girls, I think her name is Annabelle, yes, her name is writing a book about a generation turning 30, and she wants to interview Julia, obviously. Of course, she interviews her, and she says some nasty quotes in that book, and she then goes on to write a blog, and this inspires Julia Powell to do the same thing by writing a blog about cooking and stuff. So she uses this opportunity to cook her way through Julia Child's cookbook. She's a big fan and everything, so she does that. And along the way, she encounters a lot of things when she's cooking, obviously. Mostly a little bit of misfortune, like cooking mishaps. And of course, she gets challenged by eating, eggs, obviously, because she never eaten an egg because, me myself, I don't like eggs and I don't like tomatoes. So I'm kind of in the same boat as Julia Powell myself. So although I have eaten tomatoes in hamburgers, so I'm not completely deprived of that. So moving on, so Julia Child. Now we get back to her, obviously. Julia Child meets Simone Beck and Louise Botton and they want to collaborate with her for an Americanized French book. And of course, at first it doesn't flow well because some of the people out there don't think they want to do an encyclopedia book about, cooking. They want something simple for the women back home to cook, obviously. Of course, they tell them to revise it and stuff like that. And so they go back and do it all over again. Poor Julia and poor the others. I feel sorry for them. Also, her husband has been dropped from his job because they question him because of his past, obviously, which is a bit sad. Soon enough, now we get back to Julia Powell's. So Julia Powell's gets, at first, not many people interested in her blog, obviously. But soon enough, people start coming in and start commenting and start following her nonstop, looking at her blog, obviously. And soon enough, she becomes really popular from this. And soon enough, she gets contacted by someone who knows Judith Jones, the editor to Julia Child's original cookbook, Mastering the Art of French Cooking, and wants to meet with her, obviously, for dinner. Of course, she makes a nice stew, of course, but unfortunately, Judith Jones couldn't make it because she was either unwell, and being an old lady, she may not make it. So it was cancelled, and this breaks both Julie and her husband. They get into this altercation, but eventually they soon make up. Soon enough, she gets another call by a magazine food journalist who asked her to do an interview. And soon enough, she gets calls by publishers and other places asking her, would you like to turn this into a novel, a one-woman series, and stuff like that. And then she also gets a call from another journalist who's doing an article about Julia Child's, birthday. And she asked him about whether or not Julia Child has read her blog. Of course, Julia gets upset when she finds out that Julia Child doesn't like it. Something about maybe she just thinks it's not a serious writing thing. I don't know. Anyway, back to Julia Child. Her book gets rejected again, and so she and Paul end up decide to move back to America, obviously, because they no longer can stay in Europe, obviously. So anyway, but she does eventually get contacted by Judith Jones, the editor, and she's offered to publish her book. And of course, they'd go ahead to change the title, obviously, calling it Mastering the Art of French Cooking. And first, Julia Child objects to this, but changes her mind because this is the only way you can get it published. Anyway, so back to Julia Powell's. Julia Powell's eventually, she finally completes the final recipe, and she's quite happy about it, and she kind of heads to Cambridge, where the sort of the home area to Julia Child, obviously, and there they go to a special museum where it's all dedicated to Julia Child, and she finally says her thanks to Julia, and of course we then cross over back to Julia Child back in her kitchen, where she finally receives the first copy of Mastering the Art of French Cooking. So both women have achieved great things at this point in the movie. And it goes on to say, as we fade out, it explains how Paul died in 1994, I think it was, and Julia Child died of cancer years later. And Julia Powell's books now published, obviously, and turned into a movie. And of course, I should mention some new facts that just came out last year, that Julia Powell passed away just last year from COVID. So that's pretty much sad because she was about 49 at the time. So that's Julia and Julia. So what do I think of this movie? Well, I like the atmosphere, love the music, and I love the feeling of two women who were totally different but both have a love of eating food, obviously. And they used it as a bit of a passion project. Like Julia Child used this as a way of using to express herself and develop an interest, while Julia Powell was trying to use this as a way to get herself known and noticed and stuff like that. Even though it's a bit sad that Julia Child didn't like the fact she was writing a blog about her and about cooking and about that stuff. And it's a little sad when I think about it. I don't know what they're thinking now when they're up together in heaven now. But still, I hope that they buried the hatchet and have finally become closer friends now that they're together. So anyway, what do I think about this movie? I like it a lot. I really like it. And I really enjoyed it, and I love the strong, independent women's side to in both sides of the story. Both women were strong, capable, and were willing to change the world, which is what we ought to do for women in general. Now, I'm going to rate this now. I'm going to rate it 4 stars out of 5. That's how high I think about this movie. So I hope you guys enjoyed this review, and I hope you will check it out and let me know in the comments what you guys think of it as usual. So I'll see you guys next time on FanGirl Review. So see you guys next time. Bye for now.